Welcome to Warriors of the World. Today we'll be exploring the fascinating culture of the Xhosa warriors, indigenous fighters whose military traditions helped shape the history of Southern Africa. Subscribe now to join our community and support this project. The rolling hills and fertile valleys of South Africa's Eastern Cape Province have been home to the Xhosa people for over a millennium. As historian Jeff Pyers notes in his landmark work, The House of Fallow, A History of the Xhosa People, these capable warriors developed a military tradition uniquely suited to their homeland's diverse terrain, from coastal plains to dense bush and mountainous landscapes. The Xhosa are one of the major ethnic groups of South Africa, forming part of the broader Nguni language family that includes other groups like the Zulu and Swazi, though each with distinctive cultural and military traditions. Archaeological evidence analyzed by Martin Hall suggests Xhosa ancestors migrated into the Eastern Cape region around 800 to 1000 CE, gradually establishing a society organized around cattle herding, agriculture, and a complex system of chiefdoms. These early settlements laid the foundation for what would become a sophisticated social structure where martial prowess played a central role in determining male status and community standing. Unlike the highly centralized military system that would later emerge under Shaka among the Zulu, the Xhosa maintained a more distributed warrior tradition based around individual chiefdoms. According to anthropologist David Hamantuk, who conducted extensive fieldwork among Xhosa communities in the mid-20th century, this decentralized structure produced warriors with remarkable individual initiative and adaptability, traits that would serve them well during centuries of conflict with both neighboring African groups and European colonizers. The development of the Xhosa warrior tradition was intimately connected to their social organization. As documented by historian Noel Mostert in his comprehensive work, Frontiers, Xhosa society organized men into age regiments called Amabutho, similar to other Nguni peoples but with distinctive Xhosa characteristics. These age cohorts formed the backbone of the Xhosa military system, creating bonds between warriors that transcended clan affiliations and fostered a powerful sense of collective identity and purpose. The journey to becoming a Xhosa warrior began not with formal military training, but with childhood games and everyday activities that developed essential skills. Anthropologist Philip Mayer, who conducted extensive fieldwork in Xhosa communities during the 1950s, documented how young boys practiced stick fighting from as early as 5 or 6 years of age, not as formal combat training but as play that gradually instilled fighting techniques, physical coordination, and pain tolerance. These seemingly innocent childhood games formed the foundation for later martial abilities. As boys approached adolescence, their training intensified. According to oral histories collected by ethnographer Monica Wilson, teenage boys would spend extensive time herding cattle, a responsibility that required vigilance against predators and cattle raiders while developing endurance, environmental awareness, and survival skills. The young herders often spent days or weeks away from their settlements, learning to navigate difficult terrain, track animals, predict weather, and defend themselves and their valuable livestock against multiple threats. The decisive transition from boy to warrior came through the abakwetha, the complex male initiation rituals documented in detail by anthropologist Wim van Binsbergen. This period of seclusion and instruction, typically occurring when young men were between 17 and 20 years old, involved not just the famous circumcision ritual but comprehensive education in tribal history, cultural values, and adult male responsibilities including defensive and offensive combat techniques. Initiates emerged from this period not just as men but as warriors ready to defend their communities. Historical accounts from 19th-century missionaries and colonial officials, while often biased in their perspectives, provide valuable documentation of the physical conditioning that accompanied warrior training. John Henderson Soga, himself of Xhosa descent and author of The Southeastern Bantu, described training regimens that included running long distances over varied terrain while carrying heavy shields, practicing weapon techniques for hours daily, and endurance tests that pushed young warriors to their physical limits. The focus was not merely on strength, but on developing the stamina necessary for the mobile warfare style favored by Xhosa fighters. Beyond physical training, Xhosa warrior preparation included significant psychological and spiritual dimensions. Ethnobotanist Tony Dold has documented how young warriors consulted traditional healers called Amagira for protective medicines, Amayiza, believed to strengthen courage, increase fighting prowess, and provide supernatural protection in battle. These preparations, often containing specific plant ingredients known only to specialist healers, reflect the integral connection between spiritual belief and martial practice in Xhosa culture. The Xhosa warrior's arsenal combined functionality with cultural significance, creating weapons that served as both effective combat tools and important symbols of status and identity. According to archaeological findings documented by Martin Hall, The primary offensive weapon was the assegai, umkanto in Xhosa, a spear with a wooden shaft approximately 5 to 6 feet long and an iron blade. Unlike the shorter stabbing assegai later popularized by Shaka Zulu, traditional Xhosa spears featured longer shafts and were designed primarily as throwing weapons, though they could be used for thrusting in close combat as well. Military historian John Laband has documented how Xhosa warriors typically carried multiple assegais into battle, allowing them to engage enemies at a distance before closing to hand-to-hand combat. The ability to accurately throw these weapons at ranges of 30 to 40 yards represented a key tactical advantage, particularly in the bush and broken terrain where Xhosa warriors excelled. Archaeological evidence suggests that by the 18th century, specialized blacksmiths within Xhosa communities had developed sophisticated metallurgical techniques for creating durable, razor-sharp spear blades that could penetrate leather shields and inflict devastating wounds. For close-quarters combat, Xhosa warriors relied on wooden knobkerries, induku, clubs featuring a rounded striking head that could deliver crushing blows capable of fracturing skulls or breaking limbs even through defensive equipment. Anthropologist Harold Shub documented through oral histories how these weapons served dual purposes in Xhosa society, as both combat tools and symbols of masculine authority in everyday life. Young men carried smaller versions for stick fighting practice, while full warriors wielded heavier combat models with heads sometimes reinforced with metal bands. The most distinctive element of Xhosa warrior equipment was undoubtedly the shield, isalangu. Made from hardened cowhide stretched over a wooden frame, these oval shields stood approximately 4 feet tall, large enough to protect most of the warrior's body. According to Jeff Pyers, shield designs varied between different Xhosa chiefdoms, with distinctive markings and colors identifying a warrior's allegiance. More than mere defensive tools, shields functioned as tactical implements that could be used to hook and unbalance opponents or to create coordinated defensive formations in open field engagements. Xhosa battle dress balanced practical functionality with intimidation value. Ethnographic accounts compiled by British colonial administrator Sir Harry Smith describe warriors adorning themselves with animal tails, feathers, and fur headbands, decorations that signified battle experience and served to create a fearsome appearance. Smith noted with grudging admiration how Xhosa warriors appeared to grow in stature through these adornments, creating a psychological advantage before combat even began. The tactical genius of Xhosa warriors lay in their masterful adaptation to the varied terrain of the Eastern Cape frontier. According to military historian John Laband, Xhosa commanders developed a sophisticated understanding of how to use landscape to maximum advantage, fighting from dense bush where their knowledge of local pathways allowed them to launch devastating ambushes before melting away into nearly impenetrable thickets. These guerrilla tactics proved particularly effective against conventional European forces, whose linear formations and heavy equipment became significant liabilities in such environments. Unlike the massed frontal assault tactics that characterized Zulu warfare after Shaka's reforms, Xhosa military doctrine emphasized mobility, surprise, and targeted strikes. Colonel John Graham, a British commander who fought against Xhosa forces in the Fourth Frontier War, wrote with frustration about their refusal to engage in pitched battles where superior British firepower could be brought to bear. Instead, Xhosa warriors conducted strategic raids against vulnerable targets before rapidly withdrawing to defensive positions in river valleys, forested mountains, and dense coastal bush. Anthropologist Jeff Pyers has documented how Xhosa military formations evolved specifically for this mobile style of warfare. Rather than organizing in rigid regiments, Xhosa commanders deployed warriors in flexible groups called impi, similar to the term used by Zulus but with different tactical applications. These units, typically comprising 20 to 50 warriors with kinship or age regiment connections, operated semi-autonomously under the general direction of war leaders, allowing for rapid adaptation to changing battlefield conditions without requiring constant command oversight. The decentralized command structure of Xhosa forces created both advantages and challenges. According to historian Ben McLennan, this system fostered remarkable battlefield initiative, with individual warriors and small units making tactical decisions based on immediate circumstances rather than waiting for orders. However, it also sometimes limited the Xhosa ability to coordinate large-scale operations involving multiple chiefdoms. During the rare occasions when Xhosa forces united under paramount leaders like Ngika or Ndlambi, they demonstrated formidable conventional fighting power, but these coalitions typically proved temporary. Perhaps the most distinctive aspect of Xhosa battlefield tactics was their integration of cattle raiding into broader military strategy. Historian Noel Mostert documents how Xhosa warriors conducted carefully planned livestock seizures that served multiple purposes: acquiring valuable resources, demonstrating martial prowess, undermining enemy morale, and drawing opponents into disadvantageous pursuit scenarios. These cattle raids were not merely economic activities but sophisticated military operations requiring precise coordination, timing, and contingency planning. For Xhosa warriors, combat was never merely a physical contest but existed within a comprehensive spiritual framework that provided both motivation and psychological support. Anthropologist Wim van Binsbergen has documented how warfare was understood within Xhosa cosmology as an activity requiring supernatural preparation and protection. Before major military engagements, warriors consulted war doctors, Igkira Lemfazwa, who provided specialized medicines, amayiza, believed to strengthen courage, improve fighting skill, and protect against enemy weapons. These war medicines were prepared through complex rituals involving specific plants, animal parts, and minerals. Ethnobotanist Tony Dold's research has identified certain plant species consistently associated with Xhosa military preparation, including Silene undulata, used in protective charms, and Bouffane distica, believed to induce fearlessness. Warriors carried these substances in specialized containers or applied them directly to their bodies, weapons, and shields, creating a sense of spiritual armor that complemented their physical defenses. Dream interpretation played a crucial role in Xhosa military planning. As documented by historian Jeff Pyers, significant campaigns were typically preceded by diviners interpreting the dreams of chiefs and war leaders, with favorable omens required before forces would be mobilized. These spiritual consultations were not viewed as superstitious delays but as essential intelligence gathering from ancestral sources. Historical records from the frontier wars show numerous instances where Xhosa forces delayed or redirected attacks based on unfavorable spiritual signals, decisions that sometimes provided tactical advantages by avoiding disadvantageous engagements. British colonial accounts, while often dismissive of native superstition, nonetheless recorded the powerful psychological effects of Xhosa war rituals. Colonel Henry Somerset described witnessing pre-battle ceremonies where warriors entered altered states of consciousness through rhythmic dancing, chanting, and sometimes the consumption of specific plant preparations. These practices served to create what anthropologists now recognize as battle trance, a psychologically advantageous state combining heightened awareness with reduced fear response. Especially significant were the war prophets who emerged during periods of intense conflict with colonial forces. Historian Julia Wells has documented the powerful influence of figures like Nexiel, Makanda, and Langeni, who combined traditional spiritual practices with new religious elements to inspire resistance movements. These prophet leaders claimed supernatural authority to unify warriors across chiefdom boundaries and provided spiritual technologies believed to neutralize the colonists' firearms, beliefs that, whatever their empirical efficacy, created genuine psychological advantages through increased warrior confidence and cohesion. While Xhosa military history lacks the singular dominant figure like Shaka in Zulu tradition, it features numerous remarkable warrior leaders whose achievements demonstrate the effectiveness of Xhosa martial traditions. Perhaps the most significant early leader was Mdange, who led Xhosa forces during the opening phase of colonial conflict in the 1770s. According to historian Jeff Pyers, Mdange pioneered the tactical approach that would define Xhosa resistance for a century, combining strategic withdrawal into difficult terrain with targeted counterattacks that exploited enemy vulnerabilities. The First Frontier War, 1779 to 1781, established patterns that would characterize subsequent conflicts. Military historian John Milton documents how Chief Rarabi coordinated a defensive campaign that effectively neutralized colonial advantages in firepower by drawing Dutch commandos into terrain unsuitable for their wagon-based operations. Rarabi's warriors conducted raids against isolated farms before withdrawing into the Fish River bush, a strategy that prevented decisive colonial victory despite superior European weaponry. Among the most tactically innovative Xhosa leaders was Ndlambi, who rose to prominence in the early 19th century during the Fourth and Fifth Frontier Wars. Colonial military correspondence analyzed by Timothy Keegan reveals how Ndlambi developed sophisticated countermeasures against British cavalry tactics, positioning warriors in broken ground where horses became liabilities rather than assets. His forces perfected the art of rapid dispersal and reassembly, allowing them to engage and disengage at will while minimizing vulnerability to British firepower. The War of Xhosa, 1834 to 1835, represents both a high point and tragedy in Xhosa military history. Paramount Chief Xhosa Ka Kawuta initially maintained neutrality but was eventually drawn into conflict with British colonial forces. Historical accounts compiled by Noel Mostert detail how Xhosa's warriors conducted an effective defensive campaign before the chief was captured during peace negotiations. His subsequent killing while allegedly attempting escape became a rallying point for Xhosa resistance for generations to follow. The final major expression of Xhosa martial tradition came during the War of Nkasibi, 1877–1878, commonly called the Ninth Frontier War. By this time, colonial expansion had severely restricted Xhosa territory and resources, yet warriors under Chiefs Sandile and Sarhili still mounted effective resistance. According to historian Ben McLennan, Xhosa forces during this conflict demonstrated remarkable adaptability, incorporating firearms into their tactical systems while maintaining traditional mobility and terrain advantages. Though ultimately defeated by overwhelming colonial resources, these final Xhosa campaigns testified to the resilience and adaptability of their warrior tradition. Though active Xhosa military resistance ended in the late 19th century, their warrior tradition continued to influence anti-colonial struggles throughout the 20th century. Historian George Fredrickson has documented how the memory of Xhosa resistance informed later movements like the Industrial and Commercial Workers' Union and early African National Congress activities in the Eastern Cape. Leaders like Nelson Mandela, himself of Xhosa heritage, explicitly referenced historical warrior resistance as inspiration for modern liberation struggles, creating continuity between traditional martial resistance and contemporary political activism. The physical culture of Xhosa warriors persists in transformed contexts. Anthropologist Peter Magubane has documented how traditional stick fighting continues as both sport and cultural practice among Xhosa communities, preserving combat techniques and values that once prepared young men for warfare. These contests maintain elements of traditional warrior culture, emphasizing courage, skill, and controlled aggression within ethical boundaries, while adapting to contemporary social contexts. Material elements of Xhosa warrior culture have become important symbols in post-apartheid South Africa. Museum curator Patricia Davison has documented how traditional weapons like the knobkerrie and assegai appear in government insignia, public monuments, and cultural performances, representing not militarism but cultural resilience and historical pride. These martial symbols have been reclaimed as emblems of indigenous identity and resistance to colonial domination. Oral traditions preserving the memory of Xhosa warriors remain vibrant in contemporary communities. Literary scholar Russell Castula has collected numerous Isabongo, praise poems, dedicated to historical warriors, demonstrating how poetic traditions maintain detailed knowledge of past military leaders and their achievements. These oral histories preserve not just names and dates but sophisticated understanding of tactics, ethical principles, and the integration of martial values with broader Xhosa cultural frameworks. The Xhosa warrior tradition ultimately transcends mere military history to represent a comprehensive response to existential threats, combining physical resistance with cultural resilience, spiritual resources, and community cohesion. As South African historian Noel Mostert concluded in his definitive work, Frontiers, the Xhosa warriors' greatest achievement was not any particular battle but their century-long resistance against overwhelming odds, maintaining cultural integrity and human dignity even in ultimate military defeat. This legacy of principled resistance continues to resonate in contemporary struggles for justice and recognition throughout Southern Africa and beyond. Subscribe now, become a member, turn on notifications, share this video with your friends, and leave a comment so we can compare our knowledge and sources. Thank you for following our channel. Until our next strategic journey, here at Warriors of the World.